Welcome to Two Humans Talking, the podcast where we talk about the challenges of staying healthy in this modern, fast paced world. I'm Tiffany Sims, your nutrition and high performance coach.
And I'm Chelsea Scroggins, your yoga teacher and motivational speaker. Let's get to talking.
So, this week, you know how people are always say, like, oh, your health is more than just your size and weight doesn't matter. And like people intuitively know, like people somewhere in their brain know that that's true and they regurgitate that information. However, I don't know that most people actually know what those words mean in order to put them into practice.
I agree with that because I think what happens when they hear that is like, whatever, it doesn't matter. Eat this whole bag of chips. Like, I can just walk 5 minutes. It's all good. It doesn't matter. I think that
It
they,
doesn't matter. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter. Health, it doesn't matter, but it does matter. And a really awesome like visualization of it happening live time happened for me yesterday with my field hockey girls. So for the listeners that don't know, I am a high school field hockey coach on top of everything else. It's like one of my favorite, it's like my hobby. It's so much fun. I learned so much from them and it brings me back to reality sometimes because
Yeah,
especially as a CEO,
kids teach you
yeah,
big
absolutely.
time.
They teach me so often, and
Mhm.
especially being a CEO and surrounding myself with other entrepreneurs and CEOs, like
Mhm.
the people I'm around every day, they operate a little differently than the general public. Not better, not worse, just we think differently, we look at the world differently. And so they remind me how the rest of the world functions sometimes. And so it's like very humbling. And yesterday, I think that this was such a big sign of overall health and them setting themselves up for overall health for their lives was we were playing a team yesterday that was a little mouthy and their
Mhm.
sportsmanship wasn't acceptable, like they didn't have good sportsmanship
Mhm.
and
A little negative.
a little negative, a little like catty, a little when I got carded, I'm gonna laugh about it because that girl just doesn't have a backbone. Ha ha
Right.
ha. And there's a previous version of me that would have just been offended. But me looking at that other team and seeing that, I know that there's like a lack of emotional intelligence there, and they haven't developed the emotional awareness of what it really means to show up in a team sport
Mhm.
and carry yourself a certain way. And that it's not always this survival of like, I got her, right?
Right. Right.
And my girls afterwards, like they felt a little insecure. Like, coach, we didn't mean to like stir the pot. We were just asking the ref to watch. They were pushing a little extra. And we know that you don't accept us getting like sassy back. And so
Right.
we just, and I was like, girls, you guys did such a great job. You handled it really well. Sometimes it's really uncomfortable to speak up and say, hey, can you keep an eye over there? Like things just aren't right without
Mhm.
getting yourself into the drama.
Yep.
And I was so proud of them for holding their own and knowing and keeping their composure and staying, for lack of a better word, classy while still
Mhm.
working really, really hard and not letting it rattle their brain.
That's
And I
amazing.
looked at them and I was just like, there's so many grown people who do not have the skill that you just showed me.
Yep. It's
Because
fact.
how many? Yeah. And it was
Mhm.
just a really good example of health is not just about your waist size. It's how you see the world. It's how you interact with the world. It's how you carry yourself. It's how you let other people's words and actions impact you and what you do with it. And I was like, we have to talk about this
I love this.
because I
It's
think
so
it was just such a
true.
good lifetime example.
And the funny thing about that is like when you start to handle people's criticism instead of like their like as it's criticism instead of like doubt or like they're being mean to you. You look at it a different light. You open your perceptual lens, okay? And so then you can have understanding for why they might be saying this, and then room for improvement. But when you start doing that, I mean, as funny as it is, you will lose weight like it's nothing, because you're just healthier. Like you said, the stress, it doesn't beat up, and you don't feel stressed about it. Like, you just take it in. Okay, I can maybe do improve here, or maybe, I'll just take that with a grain of salt, but I'll keep doing this because they didn't know my intentions. You know what I mean? But you're just more healthier, like you were saying. It's
Yeah,
so
mental health, I
true.
think, is such a big part of the overall health equation. And I think
Amen.
that now that we're talking about it and really like bringing it all into perspective, I've mentioned this before. Before it was like a general topic of I think we put our health on an island. But even on that island, I think there's so many other islands and we're treating everything so compartmentalized and not
Mhm.
realizing how that web really works. Because I think mental health and how you present yourself, I think they have their places and that people talk
Mhm.
about them in pockets. But I truly don't think that the general population sees how that weaves into their overall health and well being.
Right. Well, because we're taught to separate it, like, well, you're just having a mental breakdown, or, oh, now your shoulder hurts, like you're physically hurt, like, and they're not talked about intertwining, like you said. And if you
Yeah.
actually delve deeper, like, when you are, say, sad, and you're very stressed and sad and grieving, you might have a hard time breathing. Like, what your mental health, excuse me, what you're mentally feeling actually counteracts with what you're physically feeling as well. So it ties together even deeper that people don't realize. So, like, your lungs relate to grief, your liver relates to anger. So, like, your organs correlate with your emotions too. And a lot of people don't even know that, right? It's like, whoa,
It's
what they
woo woo.
do?
It's woo woo. It's like, ugh, there goes that crunchy person talking about their woo woo stuff again. And it's like, no, like we can take the science part of that, be woo woo or not. Like how you ebb and flow, like your body is part of this universe and it ebbs and flows with everything around you.
I
Like
mean,
that is
talk about
scientific.
woo woo though. Like, if you take two individuals and you're sitting there constantly belittling the one, and they don't emotionally know how to, like, handle that, and then you're constantly uplifting the other one, like, who woo woo or not, you're going to see who possibly thrives more than the other, or who values himself more than one of the other, where the one maybe not values himself and constantly second guesses themselves because they're constantly being told, you're worthless, you're ugly, yada, 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 negative, negative,
Yes.
negative. And then the one's like, you're beautiful, you got this, you're amazing. I mean, that the one that's you're constantly telling is so great is probably going to look at the world like, I'm great, I'm wonderful, I'm beautiful. So, like,
That
once you
or
feed your
skeptical,
mind,
depending on what environment they come from. They
that's
may
true
not trust
too.
the world because it's like, I don't believe that. So clearly you're full of crap.
Or the other one might thrive, and, I mean,
Yeah.
it could go both ways, where they use that negative and turn it into a positive. But I'm just saying, it affects you, it does affect you, your mental health affects you, and I
Yes.
know that from experience. I mean, it affects you big time.
And then you take that into the workplace because most of the people listening to our podcast are grown people, grown humans who have jobs, who interact with other humans on a daily basis.
Right.
When you're interacting with someone whose energy is just heavy and like negative and grumpy and constantly combative and
You can feel that
everything
from
is this
a mile
big
away.
ordeal, like what kind of mood do you go home in? You're grumpy, you're irritable, you're probably like hitting the drive through on the way home because you've developed that habit as a way to self-soothe. And so like it
Or some
catapults.
people are hitting the bottle.
Yes, alcohol.
Yeah.
How many people need to go home and have a glass of wine to just to be able to get that breath and open their chest again? And it's not to say that, oh, the reason I'm overall unhealthy is because everyone around me is shitty. No, because there are plenty of people who have developed those skills like my girls did yesterday of, okay, their reaction is not mine and that's not mine to take, but I'm in control of me. So how do I redirect that? What do I need to
Right.
learn? What do I actually need to take from this interaction to correct myself? And then where am I going? And I just, I think that is a big piece of overall health that we are not talking about enough because
It's
it
true.
triggers.
And I
And
also feel like the reason we don't talk about it because we just deal with it. So when you're on your way to work and that coworker or that boss is constantly like belittling you without even maybe even realizing their tone is coming across like this, and you're already stressed about it on your drive to work. It's like you don't even have to wait to feel it when you're at work. I mean, it's just happening and you're internalizing it. And so a lot of us are not speaking up because we're fearful of, I don't know, losing our job and then losing our home and losing our husband and our wife. And then what, you know what I mean? Like it just is a spiral effect of what if I speak up and say something and then I just lose everything. And in reality, when you finally speak up and say something, a lot of the times you feel better. And then you have this communication that can build. And then sometimes you realize that, like you said, some people just don't have it and they're not going to communicate well once you and they won't receive it well, but then at that point you can do a pivotal moment of hold up, like I'm worth more than this and I need to make a change and a shift because my health is detrimental to my well-being and my life, right? So
yes.
so that's the other thing. And yeah, it's not talked about enough
And I
because I
think
also think people don't realize it too. We've just
yes.
been
And I
through it.
think the other part of that conversation is how you come to the table to have that conversation. Because
Yeah.
when you don't have practice or you don't have good examples of how to have hard conversations, sometimes it's like that 7-year-old emotional like vomit where it's
Yeah.
like your emotions are already coming out your head. You're like word vomiting, exploding on the person next to them, and then frustrated that they're not receiving your message. And
Right.
so
That's very true.
going into that conversation, you have to take ownership a little bit yourself to like clear yourself, know what it is that you actually need from that other person and what that conversation looks like, and come to the table extremely neutral of just discussion and not like, lion,
And
what is wrong
that's
with you?
hard to
Like
do. That is so hard to do because I
practice.
have, it's true, it's practice. So do not, just real quick, do not be afraid to come to the table, period, because you have to learn it and you're going to word vomit and you're going to come like 7 year old. And then eventually you turn 8 and 9 and 16 and 20 and you just mature as you continue to do it. And then all of a sudden you're able to do what you just said, because that is not easy to do, especially when you finally have hit the wall and you haven't stood up from the beginning. Then all of a sudden you kind of explode or you can explode. That's, yeah, from experience. That's what I'll say.
You know,
That was
they
me.
they say that so in different situations, sometimes we revert to not our age in some younger version of a tantrum. And they
Totally.
say that in those situations to pay attention to the response, because if you notice that you responded in hindsight, you're like, oh, that was really like a 3-year-old having a complete meltdown temper tantrum, or that
Right.
was like a sassy 14-year-old Tiffany. They say that there was something in your life at that time
Mhm.
that where you stopped growing. Did my video catch back up yet? I
Yeah,
can see
it's
it
back
playing.
up.
There it is. Okay. They say that something happened where your emotional capacity stopped growing at that age, and there's
Mm.
something there to go back and heal and allow your body to feel safe in that so that it can become the mature, however old you are, person who can actually get resolve the problem that's in front of you. Isn't
And that's
that
what I
cool?
feel. Yeah, that is cool. And that's why I just love yoga so much, because yoga gives you that moment, that space to just come back to that body part where you're holding that trauma, where you're holding that immaturity or that, stopped emotion, and just helps you release it. Yeah, that's super cool. And that's why it does work, but you have to work on it or else you're never going to heal it.
Yeah. So
That is super cool.
let's share 3 tips for someone to take control of that emotional intelligence piece. And I would say for me, my three tips to you listening would be one, learning how to take a deep breath before you respond. Because that moment, sometimes you need three of them, but that moment allows your fight or flight response to calm itself down and take a breath where you actually can have a productive conversation. Two, another big thing that really helped me was learning that it was okay to say, I need a minute and go do something else and come back to resolve a conversation at a later time.
Mhm.
And when you have a partner who needs to feel safe in that moment and it needs to be resolved now and we need to talk about it and we need to go into it, there's a little bit of learning for both of you of how to do that because your partner needs to feel safe in that you're
Mhm.
not abandoning them.
It's
You
true.
need to feel safe in being allowed an opportunity to create space so that you can feel safe again. And so that is its own ebb and flow that I've had to learn. And then in the workplace, being able to calmly let people know that it's not okay to talk to you that way without being the shitty human back.
Mhm.
Um, Finding your voice there, I think, is a very, very valuable tool. And that's a story for another day of how I learned that lesson. But those would be my three places to start.
And my three, I would say breath as well, but I just want to teach you real quick how to take a deep breath because a lot of people don't realize how to even take that breath in and then just relax and let go. One thing I will say is you want to breathe in through your nose, and as you exhale, just open your mouth and release a sigh. And sometimes if you really pay attention to your sigh, you'll be able to hear, is it angry? Is it sad? Is it frustrated? Is it, exhausted? Like you'll be able to hear your sigh, and then you can kind of think about, wait, am I just tired right now? Am I hearing everything correctly? Or am I just a little upset from whatever it is I maybe ate or saw yesterday, or, just holding on to the past? So paying attention to that, but literally you'll just take a breath in through the nose and then release that sigh. Yeah, just let it go. And by opening the mouth and doing that, you relax your jaw. A lot of us are clenching our jaw and not even realizing it. And you're holding this tension that's just right here and you're not even noticing it. So that'll help do that. The
Can we breathe
second thing,
in? Let's
you want to
practice that.
do it again? Yeah,
Yes.
let's do 3 breaths. How about that?
Okay.
Let's do it. Take a deep breath in through the nose, sigh, let it go. Do it again. Deep breath in, sigh, let it go. One more, just because it feels amazing. Deep breath in, sigh, let it go.
I could feel my breath, my sigh change by number three.
Yeah.
My sigh
And
was
if you
softer at the end.
and if you start to realize too, you'll pay attention to your shoulders. As you relax into that sigh, your shoulders will relax. The weight of the world literally just goes off your shoulders. And it's, pay attention. It's that split second, but all it is that split seconds to carry that world of, the world. And the next thing you know, you're
You muted yourself.
I apologize about that. I was getting a phone call in. So I am on my phone. There's that.
But
Um,
I think
which I
that's
knew that
really
was
cool,
gonna happen.
Chelsea. I don't know that I recognize that adding it, letting my body make whatever sound came out as I was exhaling was allowing whatever was built up to actually be released, giving
Yeah.
power back to my voice and my sound.
Yeah, and once you start to do this more and do it daily, right? So you can do this first thing in the morning, you can do this at the end of the night, and then you're like, wow, I pent up a lot, or I was kind of sad today. Like you start to notice because I do think a lot of the times we don't notice really how we're feeling. We're just like, yep, no, that's great. Yep, dishes are done. Laundry's in there.
On to the
Oh,
next.
yeah, like, and you're just next. Oh, I scrolled. Like, you just don't realize how things are really making you feel until you start to pay attention to the sounds your body is making, or even like the movements, or like if you start to pay attention, are you stiff today? Like, why are you stiff? Have you been holding on? So anyways, it gets deep, but the second thing that I will say is write it out before you go and speak it out. Um, get your thoughts out of like, and maybe you can even do a pro and con, like, okay, I'm upset about this, this, and this, but this, and this is working well. And then you can come to your partner or your boss and be like, hey, this is working really well for both of us. We're working real well on this, but this right here is bothering me. And maybe you can have, and then you can give them options. Hey, can you write a pro and a con, and we can kind of come together and see how they're working together and see what we're both think is working right and what we're both think needs improvement. So that's another good option that you could do before you go and speak it. Sometimes when you write it out, you're more clearly on your message when you go to speak it. It is not as abrasive or ornery, or, it's more straightforward to the point too. You won't go around in circles as well. And the last thing that I would say, um, maybe take that moment, like you said, and you just either go breathe or take a little walk and then come back. Like you said, it's really important to do that. I have a hard time. I'm probably the opposite, where I want to resolve things right now, because then I sit and I swirl. But I have grown in that aspect of like opening the perceptual lens and seeing, because you got to read the room. Like, different people value different things, and the abandonment thing is one of the huge things that I'll say, that's obviously something that I do struggle with myself. So I want to resolve it now so I don't feel abandoned. But everybody does it different. And so I think when you do take that moment, that break, it's just that much better when you do finally come back. And then also just appreciation too. One last thing is, even after you say all the things that you got off, I mean, I think you should leave with at least one thing that you're happy or grateful for, or think of that. So that way you're not leaving on a negative note always. Like, bringing it back to maybe a positive would be another key thing.
Well, those are like 6 examples to reclaim your nervous system so that you're in control of your body and you don't go home frustrated that you feel like everyone else is dictating how your experience from the day. And so we would love for you to share your takeaways for today. Any cool tools that you have in your tool belt that other people could benefit from, please share them with us in the comments. And with that, that's Two Humans Talking. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.